January 11th, 2001. The boardroom at AOL Time Warner headquarters in New York City fell silent as executives stared at the quarterly reports spread across the mahogany table. The numbers told a story nobody wanted to believe. The company that had just completed the largest merger in corporate history was already hemorrhaging money at an unprecedented rate. The chief financial officer cleared his throat and delivered the devastating news that would echo through Wall Street for years to come. Advertising revenues were collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. The dot-com bubble wasn't just deflating, it was exploding, and AOL Time Warner was standing at ground zero. Within months, the company would begin writing down losses that would eventually total over $200 billion, making this the most catastrophic business decision of the modern era. The merger that was supposed to create a media empire spanning the digital and traditional worlds instead became a cautionary tale about hubris, timing, and the dangers of betting everything on a technological revolution that wasn't ready for prime time. The executives in that room realized they weren't just looking at bad quarterly numbers. They were witnessing the beginning of one of the most spectacular corporate collapses in American history, a disaster that would destroy shareholder value, eliminate thousands of jobs, and fundamentally change how Wall Street viewed mega mergers forever. To understand how this catastrophe unfolded, you have to go back to the late 1990s, when America Online was the undisputed king of the Internet. Founded in 1985, AOL had grown from a small startup into a digital colossus with over 26 million subscribers by the year 2000. The company's stock price had increased by an astounding 58,000% during the 1990s, making it one of the best-performing stocks of the decade. By 1999, AOL was generating over $4.7 billion in annual revenue, primarily from monthly subscription fees that averaged $21 per user. The company's market capitalization had soared to over $150 billion, making it more valuable than traditional media giants that had been operating for decades. Meanwhile, Time Warner represented the old guard of media and entertainment. The conglomerate owned CNN, HBO, Time Magazine, Warner Brothers Studios, and a vast cable network that reached millions of American homes. Time Warner's annual revenues exceeded $27 billion, but its stock price had remained relatively stagnant compared to the meteoric rise of Internet companies. The company's leadership watched with growing anxiety as digital upstarts captured investor imagination and market value. Time Warner's cable infrastructure was valuable, but Wall Street was obsessed with growth stories, and the 77-year-old media company couldn't compete with the explosive subscriber growth that AOL delivered quarter after quarter. The stage was set for a collision between old media and new technology. The pivotal moment came on January 10, 2000, when AOL's chief executive and Time Warner's chairman announced they were joining forces in a deal valued at $165 billion. The announcement sent shockwaves through the business world because it wasn't a traditional acquisition. Instead, AOL, despite being smaller in terms of revenue and physical assets, was effectively taking over Time Warner using its inflated stock as currency. AOL shareholders would own 55% of the combined company, while Time Warner investors would hold the remaining 45%. The deal's architects painted a vision of unprecedented synergy. AOL's 26 million Internet subscribers would gain access to Time Warner's premium content, including movies, television shows, music, and news. Meanwhile, Time Warner's content would be distributed through AOL's digital platform to millions of users hungry for entertainment. The new company would dominate both the pipeline and the content flowing through it, creating what executives called a vertically integrated media powerhouse. Wall Street initially embraced the merger, with analysts predicting that the combined entity would generate massive cross-selling opportunities and advertising revenues. The deal seemed to represent the future of media consumption, where traditional content would seamlessly blend with Internet distribution. However, beneath the surface, serious problems were already emerging. AOL's subscriber growth was beginning to slow as broadband internet started replacing dial-up connections, threatening the company's core business model. The timing couldn't have been worse, but the momentum behind the merger had become unstoppable. The collapse began almost immediately after the merger was completed in January 2001. The dot-com bubble burst with devastating force, dragging down internet advertising revenues and exposing the fundamental weakness in AOL's business model. Companies that had been spending millions on online advertising suddenly disappeared overnight, leaving AOL scrambling to replace lost revenue. The promised synergies between AOL and Time Warner never materialized because the two corporate cultures were completely incompatible. AOL's fast-moving, internet-focused employees clashed constantly with Time Warner's traditional media executives, creating internal warfare that paralyzed decision-making. By 2002, the company was forced to take a staggering $54 billion goodwill write-down, followed by an additional $45 billion charge in 2003. Subscribers began abandoning AOL's dial-up service in massive numbers as broadband connections became cheaper and more widely available. The company's subscriber base, which had been its greatest asset, shrank from 26 million to fewer than 10 million within just a few years. Thousands of employees lost their jobs as the company desperately tried to cut costs and stop the bleeding. Share prices plummeted from over $70 before the merger to less than $20 by 2002. Investors who had believed in the digital media revolution watched helplessly as their portfolios evaporated. The Securities and Exchange Commission launched investigations into AOL's accounting practices, discovering that the company had been artificially inflating revenues through questionable deals with advertisers and partners. The AOL Time Warner disaster offers profound lessons about the dangers of merger mania and the importance of understanding technological transitions before betting everything on them. The deal failed because it was based on the false premise that AOL's temporary dominance in dial-up internet access would translate into permanent control over digital media distribution. The executives who engineered this merger fundamentally misunderstood that AOL was not a technology company, but rather a temporary gatekeeper whose business model would become obsolete within years. The catastrophe also highlighted how stock market bubbles can distort corporate decision-making, enabling companies with inflated valuations to make acquisitions that would be impossible under normal market conditions. Time Warner's willingness to be acquired by a smaller company revealed the dangerous power of investor sentiment over business fundamentals. The human cost of this corporate hubris extended far beyond executive boardrooms, destroying the retirement savings of millions of ordinary investors who trusted that America's largest companies were making rational decisions. Today, as we witness new technological revolutions and corporate mega-mergers, the AOL Time Warner debacle serves as a stark reminder that size, market capitalization, and investor enthusiasm are poor substitutes for sustainable business models and genuine strategic vision. The $165 billion merger became a $200 billion lesson in the perils of confusing temporary technological advantages with permanent competitive moats.